Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of All About Sport on CavantTV.com. Coming to you live from the Top of the Town studios in Cavan Town on Ireland's first live web TV sports programme. Viewed by over 1.5 million people in over 211 countries worldwide. On tonight's show, we're going to be discussing, in the first half, we're going to be discussing Cavan's latest game against Derry in the qualifiers. We have Damien Donoghue, my co-host, on the couch. And we have a great guest here tonight, Paul Fitzpatrick from the Anglo Celt. Good evening, Paul. Welcome, and great to have you.
Thank you, Ricky.
No problem at all. Damien, the Derry match. How would we start this off? Because it's just phenomenal.
I think we should start off by firstly admitting that neither myself or yourself actually made it up to the game.
True.
So we both had to get all the information on the game through Twitter, as Paul was tweeting on his Twitter page, and Declan Woods. And then listening to the radio, and the excitement built up and us away from the stadium was phenomenal. It was just brilliant, and the Twitter feed was absolutely class. But the atmosphere from what we heard in Celtic Park was amazing.
It was. I think it was actually 16 years to the day since the 1997 Ulster final, the 20th of July.
Yeah.
So that was a nice tie-in, and I think most people agreed it was the biggest win Cavan have had since that in a championship match. To go beat it, like, they're not heavyweights, but I think I described them as cruiserweights in the paper. They're close enough to the top level.
The Division 1. You know, Derry are a Division 1 team.
They're a Division 1 team. They're gonna, they probably are. They're in the top 10 in the country.
Yeah, and Cavan are a Division 3 team. You know, like we probably threw away a chance of getting into Division 2 this year, but like at this moment we're Division 3, and it was a great scalp.
It was a massive scalp, yeah. And to do so, finishing the match without normal time, without David Givney, Martin Dunn, Cian Mackey, Alan Clark, Conor Gilson wasn't playing, Jason McLaughlin wasn't playing, George McCarron, Niall McDermott. I forgot about Niall. You know, he was a very impressive player all year.
Like Niall McDermott has been so consistent with his frees and with his like real donkey work, for want of a better phrase. But his work rate out in the middle of the field, getting breaking ball, breaking up attacks and turning into attacks straight away. He's been, fundamental to Cavan. And when I heard the team with Jason McLaughlin missing, Niall missing, and the changing goals as well, I had to say I was fearful. I was very fearful straight away.
But it just shows you the strength and depth of this panel. Like myself and Damien, we were counting it actually last week. We're trying to figure out how many players we've used in the championship this year, and we've it at 25. Now it could be more. But we've counted 25 players used in the championship this year, and for Cavan to have 25 players, and every one of them, it's not like they're bit part players. These guys are really making a difference when they come onto the pitch. The likes of your Darren McVitie, Young Argue as well, who came on as well. These are two 19-year-olds and really played a part in getting the win against
that was probably the most encouraging thing for Cavan supporters, bringing in two fellas like that. The difference I would read into that is they're two fellas with pedigree, and we've always had good players in the last 10-15 years. Every year we've had one or two very good under 21s, but those fellas, their habit in tight underage games through no fault of their own was to lose the game. Whereas those fellas are coming in and they're in the winning habit, and their habit is to win the game, and they came straight in, so they were used to winning. It would have been breaking the habit for them to lose the match. Yeah. So those boys, they thought nothing of it coming in. They did it against Monaghan in the under 21s earlier on in the year. They won it in extra time, and both fellas played very well as well.
Yeah.
It was for those lads, they're probably taking this more on their stride than the likes of us are, because they're probably saying, sure, yeah, we're used to winning games.
This is what normally happens. This is what normally happens.
It's normality for them.
But for ordinary Cavan supporters, especially people of our age and older that have seen Cavan over the last number of years, this isn't what normally happens, and that's why there was such excitement over the result. Because I think I was listening to it on RTE, and as soon as extra time started, the commentator, I think it was Jarlath Bourne, said he was going around asking all the different commentators, all the different media people in the press box, who'll win it now. Derry would have to win it. More experienced team and everything. Everybody expected the Cavan wouldn't have the strength to go on. But Terry Hyland showed confidence in the young players, in his bench, and brought on players, and every one of them made a huge impact in the game. And that's credit, I think, to the management in a lot of ways. Not only showing the confidence by bringing them on, but having the players confident that when they come on they can make an impact. That's something that's not easy to do. I know anyway, when you're on a panel and you're not making the team, it's very hard. It's very easy for you to lack confidence yourself. But none of those players seem to be lacking confidence. They come on and they drove at Derry. They took the ball off the shoulder. They wanted the ball. They didn't hide from the situation. They went on and they dominated the situation. So
They were nearly leaders when they came onto the pitch. So they were. And it was funny because Joe Brawley actually alluded to this on his analysis of the game, and he was saying, like, you know, he has no qualms with losing to Cavan because he says we were a much better team. He says now Derry had better individuals on the football pitch, but Cavan as a team were better, which brings it back to the management and the management's style of play and the system that they have, and they've obviously got it right. You know, and all these young fellas that are coming on have been playing this system for the last 3 or 4 years, under 21s, minors, and whatever, and they're all used to it. And as you said, like, they're used to winning, and it's just in them to win. You know, like,
and
so
not only are they bringing in young fellas, it's not a thing they're throwing in young fellas and the lads it's sink or swim. They've got the best side of fellas that have been there a few years. Like Ronan Flanagan is playing probably the best football of his career. He was brilliant again.
And Cian Mackey.
And Cian Mackey is just a revelation.
Yeah.
He's in all-star form at the moment.
That's it, and actually, he's definitely lining himself up. It'd be very surprising if at this stage Cian Mackey didn't get an All-Star nomination.
Yeah.
In the form he's played this
No,
championship.
in fairness, he was quieter against Derry, and they highlighted him on the Sunday game, and I was thinking they're showing clips of him from previous games. They're highlighting him. Quiet by his standards. Maybe if you hadn't seen the other games, you might pick him.
He was quiet until he came back on as a sub.
Yeah.
And again, Joe Brawley alluded to this as well. He says anybody who meets Cavan are going to have to do something about Mackey, because Derry in normal time had sewn up Cian Mackey.
They had McGoldrick on him.
Yeah,
McGoldrick was doing a man-marking job from what I was told.
He did nothing in the normal time.
He worked hard, but he didn't have anything near the influence he had in other games.
Yeah, but when he came back on in extra time, they forgot to mark him. Yeah. And again, he just, and they showed the clips, he was just breezing through from half-back position, breezing through the midfield, taking ball, taking on players, and then setting up scores. And he got his goal at the end as well from an attack where he came from the half-back line and made it up and scored a great goal to win the game. Yeah. Effectively put the game past Derry at that stage, so it was.
And David Givney ghosted back on as well. No one realised it. The next thing, he caught a ball about 10 foot in the air, and the place erupted. he had slipped back on without being realised. Because at that stage, you have your extra 5 subs, of course, in extra time, and the subs are going in and out. It was like a challenge match.
It has to be said as well that the management, Cavan management, from what I was listening to on the radio, seemed to use the bench in extra time a whole lot better. I know that Cian Mackey came back on, Martin Dunn came back on, I think, as well. David Givney came back on. They brought on Niall Murray. So I think they used 4 or 5 subs in, as in some of them might have been playing before, but they brought them back on, so they revigorated the whole thing in extra time. So, like, a huge amount of credit has to go again to the management, and you know, all too often in Cavan we give out about management, and it's always the manager's fault, but very rarely do we give praise where praise should be given, you know, and it should be given. This management has nailed it. They've absolutely nailed it, because they've got, I think Brawley hit the nail on the head. Derry probably man for man had a better 15 starting, because they had a lot more experience, you know, good few years extra. You know, Mark Lynch there is absolute quality. McGoldrick is quality. Owen Bradley is quality there. You know, they had all-star nominees at different stage, but Cavan had the system in play. They had the confidence to believe in what they were doing, and the conviction to be able to go out and carry it out in the field. And that comes down to the management. At the end of the day, they believe in it.
And although we played a blanket defence as well, we still scored 122.
Yeah.
So it meant that when Derry pushed up and went at us, we went at them even more. And there was lads, we were creating overlaps and whatever. You could see that there was fellas popping up from all angles. Mossy Cora, who was playing in the back line, popped up a few times and set up a couple of great scores. And delighted for Mossy, you know, that he was back in there, because Mossy is a hard worker, you know, real stalwart, and his work rate is phenomenal. So it is, and it was great to see him in there, like, and to be part of the celebration.
Yeah, because he got injured at an unfortunate time after a very good league campaign he had as well. So yeah,
definitely did.
Terry Hyland says he's one of the bravest intercounty footballers he's encountered.
Yeah.
So that's
I don't think there's anyone could argue at that point. So looking forward now, we have London on Saturday afternoon in Croke Park at 3 o'clock. What's your views on that, Paul?
Well, I think the Having called the extra time win.
It's right, yeah.
We have to actually mention that. That has to be the
I
call
should've-
of the season.
I should have brought a copy with me.
Said that Cavan would win in extra time.
Yeah.
In
Fantastic.
That,
Yeah.
And that was in the Celt the week before the game. So hats off to Paul.
I think a stop clock is right twice a day. But
we just want to know what way this game is going to go, because we want to put a few bob in it in Paddy Towers. So.
well, I think London are a physical team, but they're a very limited team. Lorcan Mulvey is probably, from what I've seen, is their best player, and he's playing well. And we know he's a good footballer, but I think we have the better footballers. I think they're short on firepower. Like Lorcan's taking the frees. Wouldn't be renowned as a free taker. I'm not saying he can't take frees, but they probably don't have a deadly inside forward, that type of player that'll kick over frees and things like that. I thought they got a bit dirty at the end of the match against Mayo. I thought it got to a stage where Mayo were just kind of standing off them a wee bit.
And the referee nearly let it away because it was London.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, you could see that there was an element of that in the
Oh, there was, surely they were frustrated, and they're a sticky team. But I think if you wanted to play them anywhere, it would be somewhere like Croke Park, because it'd be a big wide open field.
Exactly.
I think
The
Cavan would
spaces.
expose them. I think Cavan would run the legs off them.
They should be able to, but the worry for me are two things in the Cavan London game. One, that everybody's writing off London, and there's no win situation for Cavan in this. You win it by 10 points, it's only London. You lose the game, you're diabolical. Even if you win it by 2-3 points, it's not a good result. But my biggest fear of the whole scenario is, and you alluded to it there, London getting extremely physical and maybe injuries being caused for another round, and that's something that hopefully doesn't materialise. But it has to be a worry for the management after picking up a few niggles, like lads having to come off injured. David Givney with the injury that he had to come off with, and that will Terry Hyland and co go and risk these players, or will the rest of them?
That's the big decision to have to make. I know Jason McLaughlin would probably be fit. I spoke to someone in the camp and they said he probably will be fit. Do you arrest Jason and have him right for,
to give him
for
that
a
extra
quarter-final?
week for a quarter final,
Because you're going to need Jason in a quarter final.
and the thing about it is, a lot of people are talking about the quarter final, and we haven't got over London. Is there a chance that we could be a bit complacent and it could be a banana skin? Do you know what I mean?
Mickey, if it was Leitrim or Sligo you were playing, you wouldn't be near as confident. And London did beat Leitrim and Sligo. If you were playing Sligo, you'd be saying, "Well, Jesus, they're Sligo, they're
Exactly.
champions a couple of years ago."
Exactly.
But then again, if you look at the structure of the championship has to be called into play again. Let's say for Fermanagh we beat them twice. That's it. That's 2 Division 3 teams effectively. We beat 2 Division 3 teams, the Division 2 champions, and another solid Division 2 team to get to this stage. London have beaten a Division 4 team and a team who finished 1 point off relegation to Division 4 to get to the same stage.
Yeah.
It's lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. So then, where does that leave their form? We saw Cavan beat Armagh relatively comfortably. London beat Leitrim by a point after a replay, and Armagh go and beat Leitrim by 27 points at home. So on all known levels of form, it'll be the biggest shock I think in championship history.
It would, and the thing about it is that London aren't going to get another shot at it. They've nothing to lose. They're going to go to Croke Park and they're going to throw everything at us. And as you have already said, what if we do pick up a couple of injuries and whatever? It could ruin, if we do beat them, a quarter final encounter with whoever and who would you be afraid of if we did get through London? Who would you be afraid of?
I wouldn't particularly like the Dubs. I think they'd be too
advanced,
too athletic, and too. Yeah. Well, they're fast and powerful, but I think Cavan have a lot of pace as well. But I wouldn't like to play them. I think Kerry. I just think Kerry would. I think they're better footballers than us in most positions. I like the likes of. If you had to pick Donegal or the All Ireland champions, you could pick 5 or 6 Cavan players that slot into that Donegal system. The likes of Keane, Mackey, Ronan Flanagan did get on the Donegal team. It's hard to pick a Cavan player who get into the Kerry system because of the players they have. I just think they're class footballers.
So Paul, we need you to call it before we go to a break. We want you to call it. What's the score going to be? How are Cavan going to get over London?
London. Well, London haven't conceded. I know they conceded 5 goals last week. Before that, their concession rate was actually quite good in the league as well. Cavan are struggling to score goals. You want to put a scoreline on there?
Yeah, we need a scoreline.
I'll go for a scoreline. I'll say Cavan will win the game by 116 to 9 points.
I like it. That's brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Paul. On that bombshell now, we're just going to go to an ad break, and we want to thank Paul for joining us here on Cavan TV.